Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am the Omni viewer, and welcome to the long overdue Q&A. Well, I'm ready. You guys ready?
Ready whenever you are.
I read you loud and clear, Master Omni viewer. You may proceed when ready. All right then. No more delays. Let's get this done.
June the Fox asks, for all three of you, between Spider-Man 3 and The Amazing Spider-Man 2, what would you consider the worst?
I'm actually one of the few people out there who doesn't think Spider-Man 3 is all that bad. I mean, it's not the best of the Sam Raimi movies, but it definitely wasn't bad enough to end the series. So, I guess I pick Amazing Spider-Man 2 by default.
Honestly, I didn't even watch the second Spider-Man movie.
I personally cannot say I've seen either of these films, though I am familiar with the Batman story Gotham by Gaslight.
Presley Thomason asks, what are your opinions on the Godzilla and Ultraman cameos in Pee-wee's Big Adventure?
They were just as ridiculous as everything else in the movie, and a reminder of how Tim Burton has yet to direct a kaiju film. Which is a shame, really.
Azaz asks, if you were in charge of Universal Studios' Dark Universe, what would you do with the franchise?
Well, first of all, have The Mummy actually be about the mummy. That wasn't really a proper movie about the mummy. It was the Dark Universe setup movie that just happened to feature the mummy in a glorified cameo of all things. That's the problem with shared universes. It's possible to get too hung up on the greater world and lose sight of the individual stories within. So put more focus on the monsters if you're gonna have them actually headlining the movie. And not necessarily have them be the stars either. But having them be the focus could just as easily mean they are always the topic being discussed. So that would be the first step. There is so much more that would have to be done in order to fix the Dark Universe. Then again, according to recent reports, the Dark Universe is getting yet another hard reboot anyway that wipes the mummy clean out of existence, so hopefully they learned their lesson.
Cranky Kong asks, okay Omni, what kaiju do you want to see in the MonsterVerse? Also, which kaiju wouldn't work in the MonsterVerse?
Well, I already answered the first part of that question in a video that still got the highest view count of anything I've made on this channel. So I'll focus instead on the second one. What monsters wouldn't work in the MonsterVerse? And you know, I have to say that I'm not entirely sure there are any that wouldn't work. 'Cause all it would take is a little bit of imagination to reinterpret them just right, and you could technically have any of them work. Remember, the Showa period of Godzilla movies actually started out in a fairly grounded way, similar to how the MonsterVerse began, and as it continued, it got more and more extravagant. So there's nothing really saying that there are any monsters that couldn't work. I guess if you had to make me pick one, put a gun to my head and say choose, possibly Dogora. Dogora might be just a little too bizarre to work as a giant sky jellyfish from outer space. But even then, who knows? There could still be a way to spin it that makes Dogora fit in just fine.
Atlas Zilla asks, how long did it take to write Operation Red Dragon?
Long time. I first came up with the original concept of what would evolve into Operation Red Dragon way back in late 1999, early 2000. That long ago, and the idea has been changing ever since then. As far as writing the current book that's available, that took a while too. It took 3, 4, 5 years, because first you have to finish the first draft, and then of course you need to get people to proofread it. That's the thing. You can't just go over it yourself and say, yeah, this all works just fine if I do say so myself. You need some sort of outside opinion to say, oh, well, here are a bunch of typos that you missed, and this is a giant plot hole that makes no sense, and I thought the character's name was this on page 37, but suddenly it's that on page 104. Things like that. And other people have lives, so finding time to actually read the story wasn't always easy for some of them. So, yeah, it took a long time, but it was worth it.
Are you going to be expanding on ORD lore? Have you ever considered doing any other video than ones you do?
Well, this channel exists for me to make just about any video content I want, and so far I've done that.
Have you ever planned to do a meet and greet for your book?
I've tried contacting a few local bookstores about it. They haven't gotten back to me.
For Snazzy, where did you get that hat?
I don't know. I've had it for as long as I can remember.
Ian Green asks, for Omni, do you think Godzilla would work as a Studio Ghibli movie? If so, why do you think?
Studio Ghibli Godzilla, huh? Well, it would look amazing, that much would be guaranteed, and probably have a steampunk aesthetic of some sort. But then again, that's not the only trait that defines a Studio Ghibli film. There's also the attitude, the outlook. Especially when Hayao Miyazaki is in charge, the general outlook of a Studio Ghibli film is that there are no truly bad people. There are antagonists, but they aren't necessarily villains. If there are villains, if there is evil out there, it's a more nebulous, less defined thing that exists over there, away from the plot. The antagonists, who are primary antagonists in a Studio Ghibli film, either come around to be good guys by the end, or they're ultimately determined to be completely harmless. And that sort of thing just wouldn't work in a Godzilla movie. Godzilla movies don't always necessarily have a good monster versus a bad monster. Sometimes it's a bad monster versus a worse monster. And you're not really gonna have them suddenly decide, oh, neither of us is actually a threat to each other and we don't really need to be here stepping on all these people. Let's all just go home. So, unless they really went in a vastly different direction, I don't know. I don't necessarily think Studio Ghibli and Godzilla would be that good of a mix in terms of tone. But it would look great.
For Snazzy, Princess Skystar from MLP the Movie is the apprentice of Manda from Toho. How do you see that?
As a sign that you need to stop doing drugs.
Cake Art PB Erica asks, 1. Who would win in a fight, Indominus Rex or Devil Dinosaur?
Well, the Indominus certainly has quite a few tricks up her sleeve, but I believe Devil has one distinct advantage. He is of human-level intelligence, at least in some depictions. Even at his dumbest, he is still of greater intelligence than your average dinosaur. And there's not necessarily any evidence to suggest that the Indominus is that smart. It's more clever than your average dinosaur, sure, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's as smart as Devil Dinosaur would be. So, I put my money on Devil Dinosaur.
2. What is your favorite prehistoric creature?
Well, the obvious answer would be Tyrannosaurus Rex, but everyone likes T-Rex. Me included, of course. If we're talking specifically about dinosaurs, I'd have to say, other than T-Rex, I have a fondness for some of the more unusual ones, like Dilophosaurus or Baryonyx or those kind. If we're moving into other realms, like, say, Ice Age mammals, mammoths, of course, are very interesting, but also the giant ground sloths. Those are weird. I would have liked to see one of those. And if certain sightings in South America are to be believed, maybe there's a chance I could one day. That would require going to the jungle, though. I'll just wait until they wind up in zoos.
3. Do you think the new Meg movie will be good?
Ah, yes, a reminder that I took way too long to do this. Well, back then I figured it would at least be interesting. Having seen it, I still think it's very middle of the road. Its good and its bad balance each other out to be a shark movie.
P.S. Your videos are amazing.
Well, that's not really a question, but thank you.
Kevin Clark asks, so let's say you're making an anthology film about cryptozoology and you have to pick 5 cases to use, but you can't use any of the big ones: Bigfoot, Yeti, Nessie, Mothman, Jersey Devil, and Chupacabra. What do you pick?
South Carolina Lizardman, Beast of Bray Road, Mokele Mbembe, Rods, and Trunko.
KPF Kaiju Network asks, what's with that specific hat and the outfit in every episode? I don't hate it, just curious.
Well, the hat is just because I like the fedora style of hat. I've got quite a few of these, in fact. And you'll note this isn't the kind of weak-brimmed trilby hat that people wear these days and think they look cool. These are genuine, the ones I've got. From this style to slouch hats to pork pies, I've got a pretty wide variety, and I've just always liked the style. As for the outfit, well, originally I wore red, and that was because I was told I looked good in red. The black vest was to break up the solid color. And I eventually switched to blue, partly so I could wear these Godzilla cufflinks, and partly because I felt like changing things up, and when this blue shirt appeared in the Alice Cooper The Nightmare review, people said it looked good, so I figured I'd just switch to this one.
Where does 1962 King Kong vs. Godzilla rank in your Godzilla films? Top 10? Top 5? Do you hate it?
King Kong vs. Godzilla is certainly an iconic film, but as far as ranking it, I'm not entirely sure. I mean, it's iconic, like I said, and it's got a lot of good points, but it's also got some bad points. The Kong suit was terrible. I definitely don't hate it, though. That much I can say for certain. I'm not sure I can rank it, but I can assure you I do not hate it.
Annoyed Michael asks, for Omni and Snazzy, are either of you fans of the Star Wars franchise, and if so, how would you rank the theatrically released live-action films?
When I first saw Star Wars as a kid, it blew me away, and I was obsessed with it for a period of time. More recently, though, Star Wars just doesn't grab me the way it used to. I recently tried rewatching the original trilogy, and I realized I just wasn't feeling it. The movies were exactly the same, but something about it just wasn't igniting that spark anymore, and I'm not entirely sure what it is. The prequels, I at first was kind of on the bandwagon of these are terrible, but over the years I've just become sort of indifferent to them. But I haven't seen a single Star Wars movie since The Force Awakens. I saw that and I thought, if this is the vision of what Disney Star Wars will be like, then I want no part of it. And it turns out I probably dodged a nuclear missile, not just a bullet, given the way things have gone.
Basically what he said.
Jack Hamilton asks, would you be interested in doing a video series about movies that were never made and what would have happened if they were made?
That could be interesting. The documentary about Jodorowsky's Dune certainly showed that there's quite a bit to say about movies that never get made, so who knows?
Peyton Curtis asks, hey Snazzy, what would happen if you were trapped in the Silver Eyes novel? What would you do?
Not go anywhere near the pizza place for starters.
Azoz, thought we already did him. Well anyway, Azoz asks, for Snazzy, why are you stopped making your videos for a long time?
Well, I've still been doing the title cards. I've just been working behind the scenes recently.
Josh Rosenfield asks, Omni, what did you think about Stephen DeKnight and other Uprising members saying how Mako's story isn't finished, as well as their support for the Godzilla Pacific Rim crossover idea?
Obviously set up for a prequel that may never be greenlit if that Netflix anime doesn't do well. And as far as the Godzilla Pacific Rim crossover goes, guys, just let it go already.
Jack Hamilton, guess we're getting some repeats here. Jack Hamilton asks, thoughts on The Thing 1982?
Oh, it's a great horror movie. Obviously, it's very different from the original movie The Thing from Another World, yet by being different, it's actually more faithful to the source material, which is the short story Who Goes There. It's all very convoluted when you try to put it together.
Reptor the Dragon asks, for all three, what are your top 5 Godzilla crossover ideas?
First idea, all of the space-based kaiju, King Ghidorah, Space Godzilla, the original Mechagodzilla, guys like that, all of them in Star Trek. Second one, MonsterVerse, DC Extended Universe, combine them. There was a kaiju in Aquaman after all. Third one, Godzilla vs. Alien, as in the xenomorph H.R. Giger drawing come to life alien. That would be intense. Fourth one, Godzilla and the Universal Monsters. I know it would be difficult to have them interact, even if you brought in the Toho version of Frankenstein's monster, but showing them in the same universe and exploring what that world would be like, that could be pretty interesting. And finally, a mashup of Godzilla and the Big O. The Big O's already pretty heavily steeped in tokusatsu tradition anyway, so why not?
I'm not even gonna try to top that one.
I, for one, would quite like to see an encounter between the King of the Monsters and Captain Nemo of the Nautilus.
Brett the Best asks, 1. For Omni, pitch a Godzilla movie.
I don't know what that accomplished.
2. For Snazzy, what is the most beautiful giant monster?
Most people these days say the legendary Mothra, but I kinda prefer Biollante myself.
3. For Steampunk Man, is it Yanni or Laurel?
It is good, sir, superfluous.
Rexy and Alpha Studios asks, Sir Adam Lexington?
That's it? That's it. That's all it says. Well, that is indeed my name.
Armando Lucio asks, what is your favorite kaiju from any mythology, Egyptian, Norse, Greek, Roman, etc.?
I've always found manticores to be pretty interesting.
Transapient asks, 1. With only 5 choices, which Godzilla films would you recommend to a non-Godzilla fan with no understanding of or who thinks little of the series?
Obviously the original movie, Godzilla 2000, Godzilla 1985, Godzilla 2014, and Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah Giant Monsters All-Out Attack.
2. It seemed to me in a couple of your Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom related videos that you were generally dismissive of that film series' viral marketing, stating that you prefer focusing on what's only said in the movies. Yet you have certainly covered the MonsterVerse's viral marketing relatively well. Is it just that you're simply more invested in the MonsterVerse as opposed to the Jurassic timeline? And while on the subject, do you think it's possible that there are certain situations or will come a time when, regarding mature films series with extensive lore and source material, it may actually be inadvisable to ignore other sources of information besides what is stated in the movie when formulating a fully comprehensive opinion on it?
Well, yeah, I am a bit more invested in the MonsterVerse, but also I haven't really been covering much MonsterVerse viral marketing recently, partly because there hasn't really been much in the way of MonsterVerse viral marketing, but also because I just don't think it's ultimately going to be that important to actually understanding the movie. Which leads us to the second part of that question, which is to say I think it is a huge mistake for movies to become too reliant on viral marketing and multimedia like tie-in novels or games or whatnot. Most people, when they go to the movies, they want a self-contained experience. They want to experience a complete story with a beginning, a middle, and an ending. They don't necessarily want to do homework in order to understand the movie. In fact, we've seen times where people have tried to create multimedia that's vital to understanding the film, and it has backfired spectacularly. Way back in the early 2000s, there was a movie called Southland Tales, in which they tried something that had never really been done before. What it did was, the movie itself was actually the second half of the story. The first half of the story was told across 3 graphic novels. You had to read those graphic novels in order to understand the movie. However, nobody really knew that you had to read those graphic novels. And even if you did know, you were kind of out of luck because those graphic novels were nearly impossible to find. So when they initially did test screenings of that film, people hated it because nobody understood what was going on. It was following up on things that technically had been previously established, but nobody had experienced that part of the story, which kind of forced them to slap together a little prologue segment to highlight what had happened up to that point. Not that it really helped, the movie still was terrible in most people's opinions. And of course, more recently, we've had the Godzilla anime trilogy, where most of the story elements that are vital to understanding what's going on, or just the story elements that are far more interesting, are relegated to the prequel and midquel novels. And by all accounts, the prequel and midquel novels are overshadowing the movies in terms of quality. Pretty much everyone who has read them is saying that should have been what the anime series was, not what the actual movies turned out to be. So, no, I don't think that's a good idea. I could probably do an entire video on just that topic. In fact, I think I will.
3. Would it be okay if I reviewed your book, Operation Red Dragon? I mean, I'm going to do it anyway, but I thought that as long as I have the opportunity, I may as well glean your opinion in advance as a heads up.
Well, if you're going to review it anyway, who cares what I think? But go ahead, I don't care. More reviews means more people hearing about the book.
4. If you could create your own version of Jurassic Park or Jurassic World, would you? And if so, how?
You mean like in real life? Because the entire point of the movies is that it's a bad idea and you shouldn't do it. Then again, the Park Simulator games are usually pretty fun, and I played Operation Genesis back in the day. Things went pretty smoothly there, so, I guess I just have as much security as possible and never, ever, ever make hybrids.
And this one's for Snazzy. 5. Are you a rejected Ultraman monster or a rejected Power Rangers monster?
They didn't reject me, I rejected them. I'm the one who's not returning their phone calls. Really?
Glenda Perez asks, what do you think about Jurassic World 3 date now that it has been announced?
Well, I'm not surprised Jurassic World 3 is in the works. I look forward to seeing what they do with it. I've enjoyed those movies so far. Obviously, they aren't equal to the original, but I still like them.
And Godzilla King of the Monsters thoughts and thoughts on Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom.
As for the other two, haven't seen King of the Monsters at this point because it's not out yet, but still looks amazing. And Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, I already said my piece on.
For Snazzy, if you have your own reviews on Omni's channel, then how come you don't have your own channel?
Well, I have the DeviantArt page. It's just part of our arrangement, really.
For Adam Lexington, where were you and Snazzy in that video Return of Snazzy?
That, good sir, is a tale that shall be told another day.
For Rodney Reindeer, are you going to get your own videos someday?
Well, I was supposed to get one last Christmas, but the scheduling didn't work out so well. Hopefully this year will be different.
For Omni, do you watch Triassic Iceman? Do you plan to collab with anyone else? And what are the most terrifying kaiju movies you saw?
I've heard of Triassic Iceman, but I don't really watch his videos. No real reason, I just don't. I hope to do some collaborations with people in the future. I, of course, collaborate with people on the New Aberdeen tapes. And I suppose the most terrifying kaiju I've ever seen would be the title creature from Tarantula, because I have a severe phobia of tarantulas. So, naturally, that would be the most terrifying one. It's weird. I'm terrified of spiders and tarantulas, but Kumonga doesn't freak me out. I really don't know why.
Sky Slasher has questions for Snazzy. Since I presume you live with Omni, where do you sleep?
In a bed, just like anyone else. What, do you think I'm some kind of animal?
What did you two do to the Titanic that caused the iceberg collision when you entered the time vortex Omni mentioned in the Hanna-Barbera Godzilla review?
That's not something we're ready to talk about yet.
How did you get here, and why do you look like a puppet?
I'm not entirely sure where I came from, and I resent the puppet remark.
This is really from the first Q&A, but I'm curious if your opinion differs on Millennium Falcon versus Starship Enterprise.
Enterprise, of course, especially D.
Whatever happened to that time hopper you talked about in the Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah review?
I haven't seen him since. No idea if he's coming back or not.
You said in the last Q&A that you throw on a hat and call it a day. How many hats do you own?
I own a whole bunch of hats. They just all happen to look like this one.
Do you bleed?
I'd rather not find out.
Finally, how many potatoes can you eat without chewing?
I once set a record. The first 15 are easy. After that, it gets a little difficult.
Russell Visal asks, who would win between MonsterVerse Godzilla and Shin Godzilla?
Considering how easy it is to make Shin Godzilla bleed, I would want to put my money on Legendary Godzilla, but then of course the Shin Godzilla fans come along and say that Shin can never lose because he will always evolve just the ability he needs in order to win. So, I just think I'm gonna call a mulligan.
Who would win in a fight of Gamera from Original Trilogy or Millennium Godzilla?
Original Trilogy. You mean the Heisei Trilogy? Because if you do, this will sound crazy, but I actually think Gamera would have the advantage. Because in the Heisei Trilogy, Gamera can resurrect from the dead. That's quite an impressive feat.
King Kong 2005 versus Indominus Rex. Who wins?
Considering how many implausible things the 2005 version of King Kong survives, I'd have to say he would win because he appears to have the devil's own luck.
George from Rampage versus 2 Indominus Rexes.
Oh, well, in that case, George is toast.
Do you really think that currently MonsterVerse Kong is 100 feet tall? He looks so much bigger.
Well, the funny thing about scale is that you don't really comprehend how big something is until you see it next to a person. You might think you know how big 100 feet is, but when you see something that's actually 100 feet tall, that's when you suddenly realize just how tall 100 feet really is. That being said, they probably did kinda fudge it a little with him for dramatic effect.
Why didn't MonsterVerse Godzilla attack humans when they shot missiles at him? Why is he so peaceful to humans?
I wouldn't say he's peaceful so much as I would say he's indifferent. The humans are a distraction. He's there to get the Mutos, and that's what his focus is going to be on. The humans, they aren't really his concern.
MonsterVerse Godzilla versus 1 kilometer long Kraken. Who wins?
I suppose that depends on which version of the Kraken we're talking about. If we're discussing an octopus or squid type of Kraken, Godzilla would probably still have the advantage. If we're talking one of the more humanoid-looking ones like you see in Clash of the Titans, it'd probably be a slightly more even fight, but ultimately I would still say Godzilla would take the victory.
10 Zillas versus MonsterVerse Godzilla.
Given how weak Zilla is, the outcome's a foregone conclusion.
Smaug versus Kong.
If we're talking about the original version of Kong, Smaug would light him up like a campfire and the Skull Islanders would roast marshmallows over him.
Monster Planet Adult Godzilla versus Cthulhu.
Well, that's almost what we got in the Planet Eater, depending on who you ask. I'm gonna go with Cthulhu just because Cthulhu always represented more of a threat.
I personally want Kong to win in the 2020 film, and I believe he might stand a chance if he has something to counter Godzilla. So in my opinion, if Kong would be larger than Godzilla, let's say about 170 meters or 500 feet tall versus Godzilla at 108 meters, Kong also lacks durable skin, not regeneration, wherefore with larger size, he would easily take Godzilla's bites and scratches, and he would have the lightning ability from the 60s movie where he fought Godzilla. He might actually stand a chance. Being larger, smarter, and quite possibly physically stronger, Kong will already overpower Godzilla physically, plus the lightning power gives him another benefit in fighting Godzilla. As far as we know, I'm going to skip to the part where he actually asks the question. Do you think it's a great idea? Is that a wrong idea to scale Kong larger than Godzilla? Why do you think Kong didn't have the lightning powers in the 2017 film? And who would win? Kong with my desired description or our favorite MonsterVerse Godzilla?
No, I don't think Kong should be scaled larger than Godzilla. I think at his tallest he should be kinda equal. Kinda like the two figures on either side of me. That would be, I think, the maximum height for Kong. As far as him not having lightning powers, I mean, technically that was a holdover from when King Kong vs. Godzilla was originally envisioned as King Kong vs. Frankenstein. So I don't really think there was much of a point in giving him lightning powers. Plus, kind of goes against the naturalistic approach they were going for, having an electric generating gorilla. I mean, even with all the bizarre life on Skull Island. And as far as who would win in a fight, the taller electrified Kong or regular MonsterVerse Godzilla, Well, technically, we don't know yet how lightning affects the MonsterVerse Godzilla. As of this posting, we don't know. So, I don't know. I think I'd still give it to Godzilla.
Mutophiles and Monarch Secrets 1207 asks, 1. Are you going to continue the non-moving pictures series?
I actually did do another episode by this point, and there is another one in the works.
2. I see a large collection of toy dinosaurs. Are you a dinosaur enthusiast?
Nah, I just keep them around to mess with people. Of course I'm a dinosaur enthusiast. Why else would I be surrounded by them?
3. What is the most underrated sequel ever made?
That's a tough one. I don't know if it's the most underrated, but I certainly think Godzilla Raids Again fits the bill.
4. Who is the Nemo viewer?
I don't have any recollection of that. Snazzy, what's he talking about?
Don't think about it, Omni. Some things are best left forgotten.
5. Have you ever heard the 1997 bloop sound? If so, are you going to cover a video on the bloop and other mysterious ocean sounds?
Oh, naturally. You can't get too far in Fortean research without hearing of the bloop. I might do a video on it at some point.
RobZ28 asks, just wanted to know why the omission of Godzilla 2014 from your list of the 16 greatest monster movies. Was just watching it again, and I think they did a great job with it, and you gave a very favorable review and said it was better than Shin Godzilla, which I agree, so what gives?
When it came to that list of the 16 best kaiju movies, I made a point of focusing on those films that went above and beyond. Those ones where all of the elements, or at least 99.9% of all the elements, came together and formed something that was as close to perfect as you can get. As much as I like the 2014 Godzilla, I do still acknowledge it has some flaws. So it's not quite on that same level. Definitely a good film. Definitely a film I'd actually recommend to a lot of people just getting into the Godzilla movies. But one of the all-time greatest, it doesn't quite get there. But that's not to say that I think it's a bad movie. Don't get that impression at all.
If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like it, as well as subscribe to the channel for more content of a similar nature. Also, check the description for links to our Twitter, DeviantArt, and Patreon pages, as well as the Amazon link for the novel Operation Red Dragon: The Daikaiju Wars Part 1, penned by yours truly. Thank you all, and we appreciate your support.